How's it going, YouTube family? Today I'm in the heart of Asturias to bring you a very special story. I'm not going to reveal the location, as always, out of respect for our next protagonist, who requested it since few people live in this village. She wanted to keep the place private for her safety. I'll keep my word, but I'll show you the surroundings so you can see where she lives now. Look at the two little neighboring villages surrounded by nature. Look at this scenery. How amazing. You can only hear insects, the birds and the cowbells. This woman has left her conventional job in Madrid to come here and do her work through the internet. And well, she's having a lot of success, and I think she's a source of inspiration for many. Those of you who are wishing to make a change in your life and move to a rural area or to a small village to restore your house and to live in a much more natural way and in contact with nature. So as always, I'm going to leave my social media links for you over there. In case you want to stay a bit more up to date with the content I don't upload here on YouTube, let's hear this story, which I know will motivate many of you. Well, family, I'm almost at Amaya's house and they're likely waiting. I can see them now. How are you, Amaya?
Hi, Alvaro. How are you?
I'm good. I already said I was on my way. How are you? Everything okay?
Everything's great.
You're David, right?
David.
I assumed since he told me about you. Well, I'm here to introduce you to my family because you have a very unique story, right? You left Madrid
Yes.
to come to this little house. It's beautiful. I have to say the views amaze me. How was it? How was this change? I mean, leaving Madrid and coming here to Asturias.
Well, actually, this has been about achieving what we wanted to do in a few years when we were older. We used to say this was our dream to leave Madrid, in our case, our city, to a small place in the mountains. Well, a place where we could make what we loved so much come true, what inspired us so much. And well, what happened is that things moved faster. We saw the opportunity. Because of the pandemic, I started working from home. I started working online. And then we saw the opportunity to do it and to take the risk. We decided, well, just like that.
So, was the pandemic what triggered the radical change? You didn't wait until retirement to come here? I see that you came with the whole family because your daughter is here too, right? Is she your daughter?
Yes.
Yes, well, they're watching you, huh?
Well, yes.
And that's what...
Of course, the thing was that my job was in person. I teach physical activity. I have a degree in physical activity and sports. So, well, my job has always been in person with my students, right? As a result of the pandemic, we went home in lockdown and started working online. That was originally meant to be temporary, right? But when we had the chance to go back to in-person work, well, I can tell you that about 70 to 80% of the students decided to stay at home because they were very comfortable. They loved the option. They said they wasted less time on transportation, on commuting, on arriving and leaving. Everything was much more efficient. And so, well, then, suddenly, because things just happen, a friend posted on social media that a renovated house was for sale in a little village in Asturias. And I'm a bit nosy when it comes to houses, and especially houses in Asturias. So I went in to see it, and I fell in love with it. But well, that's as far as it went. Shortly after, David, my husband, arrived and said something happened in the news, and he said, "We have to leave this place." And I said, well...
The perfect excuse.
Well, you don't have to tell me twice. We went in, looked around to see where the house was. Curiously, because also, that's another thing to keep in mind. My family is Asturian, part of my family is Asturian.
I was going to ask, why Asturias and not another place?
Well, it's really because I have Asturias in my blood, both in terms of family and experience, Since I was a little girl, my father instilled a love for Asturias in me, and I've spent all my free time here, And well, the funny thing is that my grandmother was born in a village in Somiedo, and I'd like to be very close by.
Interestingly, I recorded it. I have a video there with a yes, yes.
And it has a wonderful environment, but also, to make it even more of a coincidence, her parents, my great-grandparents, had an estate in Grau. And she and my mother used to spend their summers in Grau, and it's very close to here.
Yes.
So it was like when David told me, well, look, it's near Grau, and I said, well, okay, well, no. So, we decided to contact the owner, the person who was selling it, who, by the way, well, she's already a good friend. And, well, we came to see the house. We brought it up over dinner, thinking they were going to say, oh, crazy, and, well, here we are. We came to see the house, and as soon as we left, we arrived at Grau. We looked at each other and agreed, let's do it.
This is our place.
Let's do it. This is our place. We're staying.
That's great.
Um,
There's a question I want to ask you because I know people always carry this inside them. It's that sense of fear, right? Saying, okay, we've decided and found a house we might like, but we have to leave our life behind. We have to leave our life in Madrid, change jobs, change absolutely everything to come here.
everything.
And that's scary.
Of course, it's scary and incredibly overwhelming. The thing is, I think what mattered much more in that moment was what we wanted and what we've always wanted. And like I said, the opportunity came up to be able to work online, even though there was no guarantee that it would continue. I mean, I didn't come here with an established business that had been developing for a long time. I came here in July, and by September, I didn't know who would want to continue online.
Of course.
Yes, if they wanted to, right? So the option would have been to find a job, well, or find a place and start all over again from scratch.
But you came determined to make it work one way or another, right?
Of course, obviously, we had to make a living. We didn't have anything backing us up. We came with nothing but our own two hands, and David because of his job since he's a musician. A professional, well, when he has to travel, he travels from here, and that's it.
That's great. That's great. What I'm seeing here is that there's someone who wants to be the center of attention.
He's the main character here.
So what happened? Did he come with you from Madrid, or what's the story?
He found us when he was 4 months old,
Look how beautiful he is.
on a path in the forest,
Here in Asturias.
lost just 3 kilometers from here.
That's intense.
And, well, we stopped. We saw him. He looked at me with those eyes, and I said, don't you dare look at me like that again. And when we came back from shopping, he was there, here, sitting in the village waiting. So we arrived, and I said, well, come home with me and we'll see. The poor thing came full of fleas, ticks, everything.
I can imagine.
The bugs. We took him to the vet to see if he had an owner, a chip, but there was nothing. He stayed here for 3 or 4 days to see what would happen. If someone said,
Come on, they've changed their lives to save you. Look how well you live now.
He's the king of the house.
I mean, it's amazing. And he's my assistant. From that very day, he's been my assistant.
What was your job in Madrid? We're discussing you teaching classes, but what did you actually do for work there?
I worked in a studio, in a physical therapy and Pilates studio, so I was with my business partner and I was in charge of the exercise side. The classes were group classes, but with very small groups. Well, they were students who had, or actually have, because they're still with me, some kind of condition. And, well, that's what they decided, to keep doing it online, and, well...
So was that all you were doing?
Yes, at that time, yes.
All right.
I used to work in sports facility management. I studied...
Come on, your life is all about sports.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
But even though I learned a lot in that job and met wonderful people, that didn't make me happy. What made me happy was the technical side, you know? Being able to work with people and being able to teach and be with them. And, well, that's what I'm still doing.
Funny enough, the internet opened up a magical world for you. How were you really handling it before?
Well...
Did you know anything, or did you know nothing at all? Because a lot of people say, no, well, he already has the knowledge, he's young. Tell them how it really was.
If you could have seen my first online class from home on the first day of the pandemic, it was a disaster because I started calling all my friends, besides the students, you know. Come on, we have to get moving. And so, I don't know, there were about 60 of us. And it turns out that, of course, in the meet call, which is how we did it back then, only 9 people could join. Not everyone could join, and people kept calling me saying, hey, it won't let me in. It was a disaster. But, well, little by little, we started getting a bit better at it. Once we got here, well, I decided to make a website. Because I ran into the problem of, well, people who were going back to work, now in person, so they had less time than before. And it was impossible for them to join the online group classes that have set schedules, right? So, well, I decided to make a website where there are, well, more than 100 recorded sessions, where everyone can work out whenever they want. When they have time, I guide them through the process so they can choose the session that suits them best, and then they tell me about it. No, we meet once a month. But that was also overwhelming because I had to record myself and edit the videos.
You had no idea.
I've spent a year going from one frustration to another with myself because I couldn't get what I wanted, you know? And well, in the end, I think I've managed to get the result I was looking for.
You may think so, but I've noticed your social media has skyrocketed. By the way, I'll take this chance to leave them down below so you can check them out. Because you also talk a lot about the topic of feeling good, right?
Of course, what I mainly look for in my classes is that we don't feel pain. I mean, no, I don't teach that super pretty kind of Pilates, for example, that you can do and it's beautiful and all that. But most people can't access that kind of class or that kind of activity. Because among other things, things happen to them. They have injuries, discomfort, either because of their age or because they've exercised before and gotten injured for whatever reason, right? So I work a bit in that sense in improving our lives through health and through physical exercise.
Well then...
Anyway.
Well, that's very good. I'm going to encourage everyone watching me to take a look because I think some may want to sign up, or at least they'll learn from what I've seen you post on social media.
It's just that
He's going to have a lot of help.
I myself have a pretty bad injury on my hip because I've run a lot. I've been really reckless, you know. And well, they diagnosed it in 2017. And the only solution is a prosthesis. Well, it's a prosthesis in one hip and another in the other, you know. And well, I said it can't be now, like they say, I don't have time.
Of course.
So I decided that I had to work even harder on myself. Because it's true that before, especially in in-person classes, I would lead, but I wouldn't actually do it myself. Since I started working online and doing the exercises full out, I haven't felt any pain.
Yeah.
So, well,
That's very important.
that gives you a new lease on life.
And you guys, how are you handling living here? Because it's been a drastic change for you too, right? Moving from the city to a small village has been a big change, but it's beautiful here with the sun shining. Traditional houses. In fact, your house is a traditional house, right?
Yes, I think it's from the late 1800s.
From 1800 and something, yes.
1880 something, I think they said. And well, the change was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. A change for the better, a change worth making. More time for oneself, for the things we like. Fortunately, I still do what I've done my whole life.
And I also think this place is perfect for finding inspiration.
Exactly. And well, really with the feeling that we were exactly where we needed to be.
Where you really need to be. And as a young woman, how are you handling it? Tell us about your experience.
Well, when they told me we were going to move, I got really excited. I said, okay, yes, but then I started thinking about being away from my lifelong friends, my mom, my high school. But then I came here and said, I'm staying here. And here I am.
You enjoy being in nature, right? Do you think it's important?
Well, it's not like I'm passionate about nature.
No.
Obviously, city growl. Still, when I want to go out, she takes me down.
Well, I think we all go through that change, huh? I think that when we're younger, we lean much more towards the city and having contact with, well, in the end, with young people. Going out partying is fun, but later you truly appreciate it.
Mind you, she has gone through another phase because this was 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, she liked nature more than she does now.
Yes, there are stages.
We are in a different stage, logically. So, well, she has her friends here from school, and, well, when she wants to go out, we drop her off and then we pick her up. And that's how it is. But, well, we knew it was going to be like this.
After being here, I was able to return to rhythmic gymnastics.
For example,
You like rhythmic gymnastics?
I had been doing rhythmic gymnastics since I was 4 or 5 years old. And because of the pandemic, I quit. And when I came here, I started again. So, yeah.
So, I mean, it's been beneficial overall. I think it's all been beneficial in general for the whole family. And you've also gained a new member who you've given a chance, because otherwise the poor thing, who knows where he'd be.
that's right.
There are a lot of abandoned pets, especially working dogs like this.
And besides, as soon as he sees you or a camera, he acts like this. Normally he's calm, but today he's out of control. He's out of control today. I don't know why. What?
Amaya is showing me what village life is really like here in Asturias. Since, as you can see, we're walking alone down the street, and you had told me to please be very careful about revealing the location and things like that.
Yes.
Because there are only 2 families here.
Of course, in winter, in the middle of winter, it's just one lady and us. And then during holidays and weekends, more neighbors come. But as for actually being here, it's just the two of us. We also have a neighbor who's a cattle rancher and usually comes and goes daily. He comes, tends his cattle, does his work, and then leaves.
And how did they welcome you when you first showed up here? How was it?
Well, at first they were really surprised, when the house went up for sale. I think the neighbors were expecting someone who would want it, well, as a vacation home for weekends, for vacation, right? And when we said we came from Madrid and that we wanted to live here, well, they seemed a little surprised at first. Still, the welcome was wonderful. They are always willing to help us, and they had to help us a lot at the beginning with many things that we obviously didn't know, what it was like to live in a village or out in the countryside. So anyway, we couldn't be more grateful. We're delighted.
In fact, you wanted to. You were among the few who came around here who wanted to keep the house
Yes.
with the traditional essence. Yes, right? In fact, you're taking me now to see the contrast, right, of what's really happening in the villages, that the houses are deteriorating, which is what I usually record, and it makes us really, really sad. I think we share that same sadness of seeing how...
It makes you really sad, yes.
Yes.
The house that we decided to buy was renovated by the previous owner. As I mentioned earlier, Carmen is our friend, and she was obsessed with preserving as much of the house's original features as possible, right? And that's what she did, right? Well, the windows, the enclosed porch, the door, the bread oven, all of that is what was there, the floors, the doors. She kept everything that was there, even though it cost her much more money, because it would have been easier, right? They said it would be easier to add newer, more modern things, but she refused. And that's what made us fall in love with the house, really, because it's full of details from the original house. And our house seems to have been the house of a tailor. And in the enclosed porch where I work most days, that's where he had his workplace, where people would go to try on their suits.
I haven't brought up recording yet, since many people are interested and want to see the houses. I haven't asked you to show it to me because I imagine the house is something very, very, very private. I had already mentioned it to you before coming. That's why we don't show your house, but, well, we can get an idea with the one we're going to show right now, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
More or less.
The house, when she started to renovate it, the house was more or less like, well, not more or less, it was worse because it didn't have a roof. But yes, it's a shame, isn't it? Because here there are houses that look really nice, that are very beautiful. When friends come over, they always ask me, is there any house for sale? But, well, they're in bad condition, right? And it's hard to sell them. This house that we'll see belonged to another neighbor who lived here all year round. He was one of those who also lived here all year. If I remember right, he was 96 and lived alone. Suso was the man who gave me this stick.
Yes, he was the one who gave it to you.
He gave it to me because on our first day here, when we came to see the house, we walked around, and being total newbies from the city, and, well, we still are a little bit, right, even now. Well, we were walking with a stick we had found on a path, right? And he told us, but come on, where are you going with that stick that weighs a ton, right? And then, well, we introduced ourselves. It turns out that he was born in the house that would later become ours.
Wow.
And he told us the story. And then he said, here, take my stick. And then, well, he gave me his stick as a gift.
Such a good person.
He's always...
So now you have it as a keepsake?
Of course. Of course. Look, Alvaro, this is the house I mentioned. This was the house of this man who lived here alone. And, well, he passed away 2 years ago, and the house is deteriorating a lot. And it's a shame because there are so many people who would love to come live in a place like this, right? And, well, sometimes they face difficulties, and it might feel overwhelming, right? It's scary, especially when you come from a city, and it means leaving your job, really stepping out of your comfort zone, leaving your family or friends where you've lived your entire life, right? And it's scary. People have asked me, weren't you afraid? Yes, of course I was afraid. Well, not exactly afraid. That's not the word. It was that overwhelming feeling, plus the uncertainty about where you're headed, right? Because you don't come with a job already lined up or anything like that, or with a bank account that lets you live for 5 years without any problems, right? At least that wasn't our case. But I think that when you really want it, and when it's truly what you want, and you've dreamed about it for a long time and you want to change. I think that's what should matter most, and you need courage to do things for yourself and in that moment. For me, there's something that made me change my mindset a few years ago, and well, it was something very hard for my family. It was the loss of someone very dear and very close, who had lived all their life in Madrid and wanted to move to the village where their family came from, you know? We had a house in that village. And, well, the idea was that when he retired, he could go live there, you know? They began a major renovation on the house so they could live there. It wasn't just a house to go to on the weekends, right? And, well, unfortunately, he was going to retire in November, and in October, he developed an illness. Well, and it turned out to be fatal. That took him in 3 months, and he never got to see any of his house finished? No. And that really affected me. Well, it hit me really hard, of course. I went into quite a state of shock, and it made me reflect a lot about time. We don't know how much time we have or what will happen to us soon. Therefore, I think that we're just passing through here and that we only live once, so I believe it's worth taking risks. And if it doesn't work out, then something else will come up. You'll have the option to go back or change and head in another direction, right? Of course, what is true is that if you don't take risks, you'll never move forward and you'll never achieve what you dream of. So I encourage you to value it, to value what you really want and how you want to live.
Well, you've even moved me because honestly, I think everyone has that in them, as you said, until life hits you hard. You don't notice it, but behind you is a perfect reflection of time passing.
Of what time passing really is.
And in a very short time, because you've only been here for a little while. Look at the state of this place. There are even cobwebs on the window, and I imagine it must be very nostalgic for you too to remember.
Well, yes, we didn't have much of a relationship because, well, it was only a few months, right? And besides, that year he went to a nursing home in the winter, you know? After that, he never returned. So, yes, time really does pass, and what happened yesterday can't be brought back. So we have to at least try to fight to be happy tomorrow, the next day, and every moment we have left, right? At least that's my philosophy of life, to have no regrets.
Well, we keep walking through the streets of his town, and I wanted to ask you especially about the issue of local governments. People usually expect some support from town halls when moving to villages. How has your experience been with this issue?
Well, honestly, until about 6 months ago, we hadn't had much contact except for when we went to register as residents and did our paperwork so we could come live here. But since I work online, we started having problems with the internet connection. I don't know why. After this summer, there were several days when I couldn't work, and so, well, that's when I really got worried. So I went down to the town hall and talked to a councilman who treated me wonderfully. He even gave me his personal number in case I had any problems. And the number of another councilwoman who, poor thing, has been helping me throughout that whole period until the connection issue was resolved. They've been looking for places where I could work and everything. It's something that really surprised me a lot. I come from living in Madrid, and I'm not sure if I would have found something like this in the city hall where I used to live, no.
Something your husband told me off camera was that over there everyone was basically strangers to each other, right? So when you came here, were you surprised to see how neighbors help each other and talk to each other, greet each other, that it's a big shock for people from outside?
In my house, in my last house, the one I had to sell to come here, I had lived there for 23 years. I was immensely happy in that house, and I loved it, you know. And I had some neighbors that I think the most I've ever talked to them was the 2 days before I left, when I had already sold my house. I went to say goodbye and let them know I was leaving.
Oh my God.
I'm going to live somewhere else. And I think that's the longest conversation I've had with them in 23 years.
That's wild.
However, here, well, it's different. It's just that the relationship is different. The relationship between neighbors, like we said before, we came here as total newbies. We didn't know anything. We didn't even know how to light the wood stove. They've taught us, even how to grow a vegetable garden here. I had a tiny flower pot on my terrace in Madrid, and I would get a few lettuces. But of course not.
But it's not the same? I didn't know.
And well, they've also helped us, and well, it's totally different.
Asturians, since I travel often, are called the Andalusians of the north. In Spain, when people mention Andalusians, especially for viewers abroad, It kind of means the friendly, pleasant people of Spain, like comparing us to the happiest and most cheerful area of Spain, you know? That always caught my attention. What really saddens me is seeing these things, which I assume you're talking about, with the issue of, gosh, there are so many houses that could be restored.
Of course.
In fact, this one even has beehives there.
Yes, and I've been told that when the bear comes down, or when it used to come down when they had them working and had honey, it would climb up to that balcony to eat the honey.
Oh my, this house has quite a story, right? Now you're telling me the story since I wouldn't have anyone in the village who could tell me about it. I mean, you're keeping the story alive in the end. Whether you're from here or not, you're keeping it alive because you've absorbed all of this. And today, thanks to you, look, we've heard a lovely story about this little house you see here. As she says, yes, and Amaya has told you, there are many houses like these that you can give a second chance to. Come here, try to be happy, and as she says, leave fear aside. That's why I'm making this video series so intensely and persistently, so that, damn, you can see that there are many people living this way, and I know you like them because they inspire you to change. So let's go up to the upper area where she lives to finish the video there and show you more of the back of the house, which she barely showed. And well, I hope you're enjoying it so far. I can't show the whole village or the video would be too long, but I hope that you are, like I said, feeling something inside, like maybe I'm not where I should be, and that could help me later. Well, family, I'm going to end the video now. Asturias weather changes quickly. I wanted to show you how beautiful it was in the sun, but it's still beautiful. But anyway, I'm going to show it to you anyway, which is the house of this amazing family we have here. Look how beautiful it is. As I was saying, they've kept it as traditional as possible. Downstairs, in fact, it has the old stable. Next to it, you told me you had a stable that you're trying to keep it from collapsing, right?
Of course, it's kind of falling down, but it's not ours, so, well, we're trying to see how we can fix it.
Well, I just want to sincerely thank you all so much for welcoming me here like this, for telling me your whole story. Let's hope that, as I was saying before, we've at least motivated someone a little bit to make a change. And that's it. Like I said, thank you so much, really, family. I hope everything goes very well for you and you achieve your dreams. You can stay here as long as you want, even into old age, just imagine.
Yes.
You haven't thought about moving yet, nor have you tried anything like that. And I assure you that over time, you'll change your perspective. You'll see.
The little sister?
You're going to the city for a while, but you'll come back and say, there's nothing like this. I'm speaking from experience. You'll see. As I said, it was a pleasure meeting you, family. I'll share this wonderful family's social media, especially hers, because she runs all those physical activity sessions, which will really help you. I'm also going to leave you mine, as always, in case you want to stay a little more up to date with the content I upload here on YouTube. That's it. See you in the next video.